Okay, today is the 13th of September, and we've come to Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 10, Satipatthana Sutta. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living in the Kuru country, at a town of the Kurus, named Kammasadhamma. There he addressed the monks thus, "Monks, Venerable Sir," they replied, the Blessed One said, "Monks, this is the direct path for the purification of beings, for the surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the true way, for the realization of Nibbana, namely the four Satipatthanas." Stop here for a moment. This is the direct path, this is the translation here. The Pali is Ekayana Mago, a path that leads one way only. Jalan Sahala, one way path. So in other words, it only leads you to the disappearance of dukkha, only leads you to the realization of Nibbana. And these four Satipatthanas, I like to translate it as the four intense states of Sati. The reason can be found in my book, Mindfulness, Recollection and Concentration. Sati, the meaning of Sati is recollection. You can translate it as mindfulness, but it is not general mindfulness. It is a specific mindfulness directed only to four objects: the body, feelings, the mind, and Dhamma. So if you use the word mindfulness, sometimes people get the wrong idea. People think it's general mindfulness. It is not general mindfulness. So the word recollection is better, because recollection means recalling, bringing to mind only four objects, paying attention to only four objects, being mindful of only four objects. What are the four? Here monks, a monk abides contemplating the body. Here it is as a body. The places it says in the body. I think in the new translation by this Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi of the Samyutta Nikaya, he puts the body in the body. But the best translation probably is Venerable Thanissaro Rose, abides contemplating the body in and of itself. Contemplates the body in and of itself. So the idea is that he contemplates the body in the body, not among thoughts and among other things. That means fully focused on the body. Abides contemplating the body in the body, ardent, fully aware and collected. Is fully aware and collected, sati sampajanya. Having put away covetousness and grief for the world, he abides contemplating feelings in feelings, ardent, fully aware, collected, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating mind in the mind, ardent, fully aware, collected, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, fully aware, collected, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. So here the four Satipatthanas means contemplating these four objects, the body, feelings, mind and Dhamma in and of itself, fully focused on these four things, or one of these four. Having put away covetousness and grief for the world, I think I explained several nights ago. That means having put away the world, because if you chase after worldly objects, either you have covetousness, you want to covet them, you want to possess them, or if you can't get them, then you have grief. So if you don't want to have these two unwholesome states of covetousness and grief, then you don't want to, you put away the world, you let go of the world, let go of worldly enjoyments. And how monks? Does a monk abide contemplating the body in the body? Here a monk, gone to the forest or to the root of a tree or to an empty hut, sits down, having folded his legs crosswise, set his body erect, and established mindfulness in front of him. Ever mindful he breathes in, mindful he breathes out. Stop here for a moment. Establish mindfulness in front of him, that day I mentioned. That means if you set up something in front of you, you can only see it. You don't see any other thing. So you set up mindfulness in front of you, you are only aware of mindfulness. You are not aware of any other thing. So Breathing in long, he understands, I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, he understands, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he understands, I breathe in short. Or breathing out short, he understands, I breathe out short. He trains thus, I shall breathe in experiencing the whole body of the breath. He trains thus, I shall breathe out experiencing the whole body. He trains thus, I shall breathe in tranquilizing the body conditioner. He trains thus, I shall breathe out tranquilizing the body conditioner. Kaya Sankara. Just as a skilled turner or his apprentice, when making a long turn, understands I make a long turn. Or when making a short turn, understands I make a short turn. So too, breathing in long, a monk understands I breathe in long, etc. So here, when the breath is long, he notices that it is long. If the breath is short, he notices that it is short. And then he breathes in and out, experiencing the body. The body is the breath body. It's not the physical body, it's a breath body. And then he again says, I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the body conditioner. The body conditioner is also the breath, because the body conditioner, the body depends on breath to survive. Without the breath, the body cannot survive. So the body conditioner refers to the breath. So as he continues observing the breath, then the breath becomes more and more tranquilized, becomes calmer, becomes more tranquil. And then, just like an apprentice, he notices whether it's a long breath or short breath, etc. In this way, he abides contemplating the body in the body internally, or he abides contemplating the body in the body externally, or he abides contemplating the body in the body both internally and externally, or else he abides contemplating in the body its arising factors, or he abides contemplating in the body its vanishing factors, or he abides contemplating in the body both its arising and vanishing factors, or else mindfulness that there is a body is simply established in him to the extent necessary for bare knowledge and mindfulness or collectedness. And he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That is how a monk abides contemplating the body in the body. He abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. Because if he clings to anything in the world, then the unwholesome states of covetousness and grief arise. So when he practices the holy path, he lets go of things in the world. It's very important, otherwise you cannot progress in the spiritual path. A lot of people want to practice the spiritual path but still cannot let go, so they cannot make much progress. And then this arising factors refers to the conditions that cause its arising, the factors that cause the origination of the body, here referring to the breath body. The conditions, its vanishing factors refers to the factors for its ceasing, for its vanishing. And the body internally is our own body, externally is the external bodies. Here in this case, we are talking about the breath body, but this body can refer to any body, can be the physical body also. Again, monks, when walking, a monk understands, I am walking. When standing, he understands, I am standing. When sitting, he understands, I am sitting. When lying down, he understands, I am lying down. Or he understands accordingly, however his body is disposed. In this way, he abides contemplating the body in the body internally, externally, and both internally and externally, etc. And he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That too is how a monk abides contemplating the body in the body. Now this one refers to the 4 postures. These 4 postures, generally if you are aware of the body postures, it is in the suttas, it's generally called sampajanya. The Buddha talks about sati, sampajanya. We have to practice both. Sati is recollecting the 4 objects of sati. Sampajanya is general mindfulness. General mindfulness. Whatever your body is doing, you are aware. you're walking, you're aware you're walking. If you're changing your clothes, you're aware you're changing your clothes. If you're eating, you're aware you're eating. Why is Sampajanya practice? Because Sampajanya, if you are aware of our body, then our mind does not run away. We are practicing the holy path to destroy the asavas. Asavas are uncontrolled mental outflows, the mind leaking. So when the mind flows, when the asavas flow, then our mind starts thinking here, running here, running there. We are not aware of our body. We are not aware whatever we are doing. Our mind is straying to the office, or straying to the family, or straying to our problems and all that. So as long as you are aware of your body, the mind does not run away. So it helps to keep your mind focused. Helps to prevent, Sampajanya helps to prevent the mind from flowing carelessly. So in that way, it helps us to keep our mind focused. Again, monks. A monk is one who acts in full awareness when going forward and returning, who acts in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away, who acts in full awareness when flexing and extending his limbs, who acts in full awareness when wearing his robes and carrying his outer bowl and robe, who acts in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food and tasting, who acts in full awareness when defecating and urinating, who acts in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, talking and keeping silent. In this way he abides contemplating the body in the body, internally, externally, and both internally and externally, etc. So this one actually is Sampajanya. This one being aware of all the body actions. Just now the previous one was just referring to the 4 postures, more specific. This one is general awareness of the body. So this is Sampajanya. The 4th one, again monks. A monk reviews the same body up from the soles of the feet and down from the top of the hair, bounded by skin, as full of many kinds of impurity thus. In this body there are head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone, marrow, kidney, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, large intestines, small intestines, contents of the stomach, feces. There should be a brain there missing, or maybe they put the brain at the end. Bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, spittle, snot, all of the joints, urine. Just as though there were a bag with an opening at both ends, full of many sorts of grain, such as hill rice, red rice, beans, peas, millet and white rice. And a man with good eyes were to open it and review it thus. This is hill rice, this is red rice, these are beans, these are peas, this is millet, this is white rice. So too a monk reviews this same body as full of many kinds of impurity thus. In this body there are head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, etc. In this way he abides contemplating the body in the body, internally, externally, and both internally and externally. And he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That too is how a monk abides contemplating the body in the body. Let's stop here for a moment. This meditation on the 32 parts of the body that we just went through. This was the first meditation taught by the Buddha. If you practice this, then you will notice that the body is not as attractive as we used to think. If you don't practice this type of meditation, you see the body only skin deep. See the outer looks of the body. So enticing, so attractive. But when you consider all that is inside the body, then even Miss Universe doesn't look so attractive anymore. Again, monks. A monk reviews the same body, however it is placed, however disposed, as consisting of elements thus. In this body there are the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the air or wind element. Just as though a skilled butcher or his apprentice had killed a cow and was seated at the crossroads, with it cut up into pieces, so too a monk reviews the same body as consisting of elements thus. In this body there are the earth element, water element, fire element, air element. In this way he abides contemplating the body in the body, internally, externally, and both internally and externally. And he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That too is how a monk abides contemplating the body in the body. So this is another way of contemplating the body as consisting of the 4 elements. The 4 elements are supposed to be the physical body or the physical world. And these 4 elements are not, when you refer to the earth element, it's not really the earth element. It refers to the hardness, the characteristic of hardness. Anything that is hard is called the earth element. The water element refers to the property of cohesion. When there is liquid, it tends to cohere together. So that refers to the water element. The fire element is the heat element. And the air or wind element is the element that causes motion, movement. So anything in the world, in the physical world, that has any one of these characteristics are referred by these 4 characteristics. Again, monks, as though you were to see a corpse thrown aside in a charnel ground, 1, 2, or 3 days dead, bloated, livid, and oozing matter. A monk compares this same body with it thus. This body too is of the same nature. It will be like that. It is not exempt from that fate. So this corpse contemplation is very good. If you look at a dead corpse, it's 3 days dead. It is oozing liquid from the 9 holes, and it's smelly, and it's blue-black and all that. So it's repulsive. Repulsive to see, repulsive to smell. But when you consider one day our body also will be like that. No need to be so vain about our body. Now we think it's so beautiful or so handsome, especially when we are young. But one day it will be like that. Rotten corpse, smelly, nobody wants. In this way, he abides contemplating the body in the body, internally, externally, and both internally and externally, etc. And he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That too is how a monk abides contemplating the body in the body. Again, as though he were to see a corpse thrown aside in a charnel ground, being devoured by crows, hawks, vultures, dogs, jackals, or various kinds of worms. A monk compares this same body with it thus. This body too is of the same nature. It will be like that. It is not exempt from that fate. That too is how a monk abides contemplating the body in the body. Again, as though he were to see a corpse thrown aside in a charnel ground, a skeleton with flesh and blood held together with sinews, or a fleshless skeleton smeared with blood held together with sinews, or later a skeleton without flesh and blood held together with sinews, and later disconnected bones scattered in all directions. Here a hand bone, there a foot bone, here a shin bone, there a thigh bone, here a hip bone, there a back bone, here a rib bone, there a breast bone, here an arm bone, there a shoulder bone, here a neck bone, there a jaw bone, here a tooth, there the skull. A monk compares this same body with it thus. This body too is of the same nature. It will be like that. It is not exempt from that fate. That too is how a monk abides contemplating the body in the body. Again, as though he were to see a corpse thrown aside in a charnel ground, bones bleached white, the color of shells, or later bones heaped up more than a year old, and later bones rotted and crumbled to dust. A monk compares this same body with it thus. This body too is of the same nature. It will be like that. It is not exempt from that fate. So this contemplation is of the different types of corpse at the various stages of decay. Initially it's 3 days, 2 or 3 days old, it's bloated. I don't know whether you all have noticed a dead dog or a dead cow by the roadside or a dead buffalo. After a few days you see it's bloated, and there's a lot of air inside there, I think. So it seems to be like a balloon bloated up. It's so tight, the 4 legs are all stretched in different directions. And then after another 1 or 2 more days you see it's collapsed already. Collapsed, and the liquid is flowing out. It's full of worms. All the worms are eating the flesh. Then later, you find it's very smelly. Sometimes the dog also will go and eat something. And later you find different stages of decay. So in the Buddha's days, they have this charnel ground where they throw the body in the forest, throw in the body for it to rot, for the animals to eat. So the monk who's very serious, he will go and sit at the charnel ground and contemplate, see the various stages of decay of the corpse. So it's quite a sobering contemplation. In this way, he abides contemplating the body in the body internally, or he abides contemplating the body in the body externally, or he abides contemplating the body in the body both internally and externally, or else he abides contemplating in the body its arising factors, or he abides contemplating in the body its vanishing factors, or he abides contemplating in the body both its arising and vanishing factors. Or else mindfulness that there is a body is simply established in him to the extent necessary for bare knowledge and mindfulness and recollection. And he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That too is how a monk abides contemplating the body in the body. This contemplation of the corpse brings to mind, the Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal, we had this emperor in India. I guess he had many wives. One was his favorite wife, must have been very young and beautiful. And this young and beautiful wife passed away. And he was so sad. He wanted to preserve the body. He clung on to the body, but after a few days he starts to get smelly. Cannot continue to cling to it. So he built this mausoleum, this Taj Mahal, to store that corpse. Nowadays, if someone were in his position, what would they do? They inject it with anesthetics, hoping that in a few hundred years' time can revive. People cannot accept anicca. A lot of people, we know the world is impermanent, but we cannot accept. And how monks, does a monk abide contemplating feelings in feelings? Here, when feeling a pleasant feeling, a monk understands, I feel a pleasant feeling. When feeling a painful feeling, he understands, I feel a painful feeling. When feeling a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he understands, I feel a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. When feeling a worldly pleasant feeling, he understands, I feel a worldly pleasant feeling. When feeling an unworldly pleasant feeling, he understands, I feel an unworldly pleasant feeling. When feeling a worldly painful feeling, he understands, I feel a worldly painful feeling. When feeling an unworldly painful feeling, he understands, I feel an unworldly painful feeling. When feeling a worldly neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he understands, I feel a worldly neither painful nor pleasant feeling. When feeling an unworldly neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he understands, I feel an unworldly neither painful nor pleasant feeling. This worldly and unworldly, the other day when we were reading the Samyutta Nikaya, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi has changed his translation from here, worldly to unworldly. He changed to, if I remember correctly, carnal. You remember the carnal delight, carnal rapture, carnal and spiritual. Carnal and spiritual. In other words, the body feeling, and the spiritual, I guess, could be the mental. In this way, he abides contemplating feelings in feelings internally, or he abides contemplating feelings in feelings externally, or he abides contemplating feelings in feelings both internally and externally, or else he abides contemplating in feelings their arising factors, or he abides contemplating in feelings their vanishing factors, or he abides contemplating in feelings both their arising and vanishing factors, or else mindfulness that there is feeling is simply established in him to the extent necessary for bare knowledge and recollection. And he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That is how a monk abides contemplating feelings in feelings. So when you contemplate feelings, whatever type of feeling arises, you know that it is such a feeling. You should also understand that it is impermanent. So because it is impermanent, I don't cling to it. So even if like a angry feeling arises, we know it's just an unwholesome state of mind. We just wait for it to subside. and then you have an enjoyable feeling arising, then we should know, even though it's so enjoyable, don't cling to it, because very soon it will go away. If you cling to it, it will give you a lot of dukkha. That's why the Buddha says all feelings are basically intrinsically dukkha. Even pleasant feelings are also dukkha intrinsically, because very soon when they go away, it turns from pleasant to unpleasant. And how monks, thus a monk abide contemplating mind in mind. Here a monk understands mind affected by lust as mind affected by lust, and mind unaffected by lust as mind unaffected by lust. He understands mind affected by hatred as a mind affected by hatred, and a mind unaffected by hatred as a mind unaffected by hatred. He understands a mind affected by delusion as a mind affected by delusion, and a mind unaffected by delusion as a mind unaffected by delusion. He understands a contracted mind as a contracted mind, and a distracted mind as a distracted mind. Let's stop here for a moment. If you remember the Majjhima Nikaya Suttas we studied, a contracted mind means a mind that is overcome by sloth and torpor. When you have sloth and torpor, as refers to a contracted mind. A distracted mind is a mind that is distracted out to the six sense objects, to seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touch and thinking. He understands an exalted mind as an exalted mind, an unexalted mind as an unexalted mind. He understands a surpassed mind as a surpassed mind, and an unsurpassed mind as an unsurpassed mind. He understands a concentrated mind as a concentrated mind, and an unconcentrated mind as an unconcentrated mind. He understands a liberated mind as a liberated mind, and an unliberated mind as an unliberated mind. In this way he abides contemplating mind in mind internally, or he abides contemplating mind in mind externally, or he abides contemplating mind in mind both internally and externally, or else he abides contemplating in mind its arising factors, or he abides contemplating in mind its vanishing factors, or he abides contemplating in mind both its arising and vanishing factors, or else mindfulness that there is mind is simply established in him to the extent necessary for bare knowledge and recollection, and he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That is how a monk abides contemplating mind as mind. Contemplation of Dhammas. Now we come to contemplation of Dhammas. Here it says mind objects. That's a wrong translation. Because of the four objects of Sati or Satipatthana, this last one, the Dhamma, is the most important. Because there's this one sutta where the Buddha says, a person becomes liberated only under 5 circumstances. There are only 5 occasions when a monk becomes liberated, attains arahanthood. One is when he listens to the Dhamma, he understands and becomes liberated. The second one, when he's teaching the Dhamma. Third one, when he's repeating the Dhamma. The fourth, when he's reflecting on the Dhamma. And only the fifth is during meditation, when he contemplates on the Samadhi Nimitta. So you see, out of these 5 occasions, 4 of them have to do with Dhamma. And 4 of them actually have to do with contemplation of Dhamma. Because even when you repeat the Dhamma, you are contemplating. Because when you repeat the Dhamma, you are repeating it in a language you understand. So as soon as you understand the words, you start to digest it. That is vipassana, contemplation. So when you listen to the Dhamma, that is vipassana, that is contemplation. When you teach the Dhamma, you also have to contemplate the Dhamma before you can speak the Dhamma. That again is vipassana, that is contemplation. When you repeat the Dhamma, that is also vipassana, contemplation. When you reflect on the Dhamma, that is also vipassana, contemplation. So the samatha part is the meditation part. And the vipassana is actually nothing to do with meditation. It is just contemplation of the Dhamma. So here this last object of sati or satipatthana is not mind objects, but it's the Dhamma, the Buddha's Dhamma. And how monks, does a monk abide contemplating Dhamma in Dhamma? Here a monk abides contemplating Dhamma in terms of the 5 hindrances. And how does a monk abide contemplating Dhamma in terms of the 5 hindrances? Here, there being sensual desire in him, a monk understands, there is sensual desire in me. or there being no sensual desire in him, he understands there is no sensual desire in me. And he also understands how there comes to be the arising of unarisen sensual desire, and how there comes to be the abandoning of arisen sensual desire, and how there comes to be the future non-arising of abandoned sensual desire. Similarly, there being ill will in him, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, doubt. And so monk understands there is this hindrance in me, or there being no hindrance in him, he understands there is no hindrance in me. And he understands how there comes to be arising of the hindrance, how there comes to be abandoning of the hindrance, and how there comes to be the future non-arising of the abandoned hindrance. In this way, he abides contemplating Dhamma in Dhamma internally, or he abides contemplating Dhamma in Dhamma externally, or he abides contemplating Dhamma in Dhamma both internally and externally, or else he abides contemplating in Dhamma the arising factors, or he abides contemplating in Dhamma the vanishing factors, or he abides contemplating in Dhamma both the arising and vanishing factors, or else mindfulness that there is Dhamma is simply established in him to the extent necessary for bare knowledge and recollection, and he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That is how a monk abides contemplating Dhamma in terms of the five hindrances. Again, a monk abides contemplating Dhamma in terms of the five aggregates of attachment. And how does a monk abide contemplating Dhamma in terms of the five aggregates of attachment? Here a monk understands such is material form or body, such its origin, such its disappearance, such is feeling, such its origin, such its disappearance, such is perception, such its origin, such its disappearance, such is volition, such its origin, such its disappearance, such is consciousness, such its origin, such its disappearance. In this way he abides contemplating Dhamma internally, externally, etc. These five aggregates refers to five things, body, feelings, perception, volition and consciousness. And these five things can be also considered to be two things, body and mind. Mind consisting of the four things, feelings, perception, volition and consciousness. Again, a monk abides contemplating Dhamma in terms of the six internal and external bases. And how does a monk abide contemplating Dhamma in terms of the six internal and external bases? Here a monk understands the I, he understands forms, he understands the factor that arises dependent on both. And he also understands how there comes to be the arising of the unarisen factor, and how there comes to be the abandoning of the arisen factor, and how there comes to be the future non-arising of the abandoned factor. Similarly, he understands the ear, he understands the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind, understands the six bases and the objects and the factor that arises. In this way, he abides contemplating Dhamma internally, externally, etc. These six bases refers to the six sense bases of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And the objects are the object of eye is forms, the object of ear is sounds, etc. So the factor that arises is the craving. The craving, when you see something beautiful, you crave for it. That is the factor. And when you hear some nice sounds, you also attach to it. That is again the factor. Similarly for smells, taste, etc. Again, a monk abides contemplating Dhamma in terms of the seven enlightenment factors, bojjhangas. And how does a monk abide contemplating Dhamma in terms of the seven enlightenment factors? Here, there being the mindfulness or recollection enlightenment factor in him, a monk understands there is the mindfulness or recollection enlightenment factor in me. Or there being no sati enlightenment factor in him, he understands there is no sati enlightenment factor in him. And he also understands how there comes to be the arising of the unarisen sati enlightenment factor, and how the arisen sati enlightenment factor comes to fulfillment by development. There being the investigation of Dhamma enlightenment factor, Dhamma Vichaya. Similarly, there being the energy enlightenment factor, there being the delight, piti enlightenment factor, there being the tranquility, passaddhi enlightenment factor. That being the concentration, samadhi, enlightenment factor. That being the equanimity, upekkha, enlightenment factor. He understands that there is the enlightenment factor in me, or when there is no, he understands there is no enlightenment factor, how they arise, etc. In this way, by contemplating mind in mind, etc., contemplating this Dhamma in Dhamma, etc. So these enlightenment factors, 7 of them, are very important factors for enlightenment. And we went through the whole Sangyutta on the Bojjhangas a few days ago. Again, monks, a monk abides contemplating Dhamma in terms of the 4 noble truths. And how does a monk abide contemplating Dhamma in terms of the 4 noble truths? Here a monk understands as it actually is, this is suffering. He understands as it actually is, this is the origin of suffering. And he understands as it actually is, this is the cessation of suffering. He understands as it actually is, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. In this way he abides contemplating Dhamma internally, or he abides contemplating Dhamma in Dhamma externally, etc. This here, notice here, this description of the 4 noble truths is very short. So this sutta, this Satipatthana Sutta, differs from the Satipatthana Sutta found in the Digha Nikaya. Only here, in the Satipatthana Sutta, they explain the 4 noble truths in greater detail. Otherwise, the rest of the sutta is exactly the same between the Satipatthana Sutta found in the Majjhima Nikaya and the Satipatthana Sutta found in the Digha Nikaya. In the Digha Nikaya, when they explain the 4 noble truths in detail, they explain suffering, they explain the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, the path leading to the cessation of suffering. And then in the Noble Eightfold Path, the explanation of the Noble Eightfold Path, when it comes to right concentration, it is stated in the Satipatthana Sutta that right concentration refers to the 4 jhanas. Everywhere in the suttas, when the Buddha talks about right concentration or perfect concentration, it always refers to the 4 jhanas. But nowadays, people misinterpret and say that concentration can refer to momentary concentration, kanika samadhi. This word kanika samadhi, the Buddha never heard it also, never used it. So it is something that developed later. In the Buddha's teachings, samadhi always refers to the jhanas. Monks, if anyone should develop these 4 Satipatthanas, intense states of recollection, in such a way for 7 years, one of 2 fruits could be expected for him. Either final knowledge here and now, or that if there is a trace of clinging left, non-return. Let alone 7 years, monks. If anyone should develop these 4 intense states of recollection in such a way for 6 years, or for 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, one of 2 fruits could be expected for him, either final knowledge here and now, or if there is a trace of clinging left, non-return. Let alone 1 year, monks, if anyone should develop these 4 intense states of recollection in such a way for 7 months, or 6 months, 5 months, 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, for half a month, one of 2 fruits could be expected for him, either final knowledge here and now, or if there is a trace of clinging left, non-return. Let alone half a month, monks, if anyone should develop these 4 intense states of recollection in such a way, for 7 days, one of 2 fruits could be expected for him, either final knowledge here and now, or if there is a trace of clinging left, non-return. So it was with reference to this that it was said, monks, this is the direct path, or this is the path leading one way only, for the purification of beings, for the surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the true way, for the realization of Nibbana, namely the 4 intense states of recollection. That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So in this last part, the Buddha says, if a monk practices the 4 Satipatthanas correctly, even for 7 days, in 7 days' time, he can become liberated, become enlightened. So that can only happen if the sati is unremitting sati. Every second, the mindfulness does not stray, does not weaken, does not run away. So that's why it's called intense state of recollection. so intense that it's not, there's no let up. So in the our Buddha, among our Buddha's disciples, we know of only one, Venerable Mahamoggallana, who attained liberation in 7 days. He practiced 7 days. He practiced strenuously for 7 days, and he became enlightened in such a short time. But that was possible only with the help of the Buddha, because mentioned in the Samyutta Nikaya that we read, when he entered in the first jhana, because he was practicing so hard, he didn't take rest, you see. So he was so sleepy that he fell out of the first jhana. When that happened, the Buddha came to him and asked him to be more mindful, don't be nodding. Then he knew that the Buddha was observing him. Then he used more energy and he could stay in the first jhana. And after that, he could enter the second jhana. But because also the same reason, he was so tired that he was nodding his head and coming out of the second jhana. Again, the Buddha went to him and reminded him, and again used more effort and could abide steady in the second jhana. After that, similarly for the third jhana, fourth jhana, the other jhanas, until his mindfulness was unremitting, no let up in his mindfulness, no sleep for 7 days and nights, no sleep until he became enlightened. So nowadays, what is being practiced now, without that samadhi, it's impossible to become enlightened in 7 days. Not to say 7 days, even 7 years or 70 years without the strong samadhi, you cannot become enlightened at all.